You think MSG is just something you shake into a pot of soup? I'm counting down 35 of the most clever, most effective, most borderline forbidden MSG hacks that Chinese home cooks and restaurant chefs use to make everything taste insanely better. Number 35. Use MSG as a dry rub base for grilled meats before cooking. Chinese street vendors do this constantly. Mix a small pinch of MSG, about an eighth of a teaspoon, with your salt, garlic powder, and 5-spice before rubbing it onto chicken thighs or pork belly. Let it sit for just 15 minutes, not overnight. The MSG begins breaking down the surface protein slightly, which helps the meat develop a deeper, faster crust when it hits a hot grill. The glutamate compounds react with the amino acids already present in meat during the Maillard reaction, intensifying that savory brown crust flavor by a significant margin. Americans tend to marinate for hours, but Chinese street cooks know that MSG shortens the time needed because it amplifies what is already there. Number 34. Add a tiny pinch to your scrambled eggs while beating them. This is a breakfast trick that Chinese home cooks swear by, and once you try it, you will never go back. Add just a small pinch, literally about a 1/16 of a teaspoon, to 2 beaten eggs before cooking. The glutamate enhances the natural sulfur compounds in egg yolk, making the flavor taste richer and more rounded without tasting like anything artificial. The eggs come out tasting like the best version of themselves. This works because eggs already contain natural glutamates, and adding a tiny extra amount pushes the overall perception of savoriness past the threshold where your brain registers deep satisfaction. Number 33. Dissolve MSG in a small amount of warm water and use it to season salad dressings instead of salt. Chinese people rarely eat raw salads the Western way, but when they do dress cold dishes like cucumber salads or jellyfish, they use this trick. Because MSG is a sodium compound, it contributes some saltiness, but it mainly adds depth. When dissolved first in warm water, it distributes more evenly throughout a dressing than dry crystals would. The result is a dressing where every bite has consistent umami rather than random salty spots. For Americans making vinaigrettes, this is a genuinely useful swap for at least half the salt. Number 32. Sprinkle MSG onto popcorn instead of or alongside salt. This sounds simple, but it is genuinely transformative. Chinese snack culture uses MSG on roasted seeds, dried peas, and crunchy snacks in exactly this way. On popcorn, MSG sticks to the surface just like salt, but adds a savory depth that makes plain popcorn taste almost like it has been seasoned with something more complex. The science is that your taste receptors for umami are distributed across the entire tongue, meaning MSG delivers flavor in a more full-mouth way than salt alone, which mainly hits the sides and tip of your tongue. Number 31. Mix MSG into your flour coating when making fried chicken or fried fish. Chinese fried chicken and fried fish dishes are famous for their intensely flavorful crust. The trick is building the seasoning into the coating itself. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of MSG per cup of flour or cornstarch in your dredging mixture. As the coating fries, the MSG compounds caramelize and intensify alongside the starches, creating a crust that has its own deep savory flavor independent of the meat inside. This means, even if you under-seasoned the meat itself, the crust carries the dish. Number 30. Use MSG in your pasta water, the way Chinese cooks season noodle water. Chinese noodle shops season their cooking water with more than just salt. Adding a small pinch of MSG to your boiling water when cooking any pasta or noodle means the noodle absorbs a tiny amount of glutamate as it cooks. This is subtle, but noticeable. The noodle itself ends up with a faint savory quality that makes sauces cling better flavor-wise, meaning your brain registers the sauce as more cohesive with the noodle rather than two separate things on a plate. Number 29. Combine MSG with vinegar to make a quick dipping sauce enhancer. This is a trick from Chinese dumpling houses. Plain black vinegar or rice vinegar tastes sharp and one-dimensional. Stir in a tiny pinch of MSG and the acidity becomes smoother and more complex. The glutamate actually reduces your perception of sharpness, similar to how salt reduces bitterness. For Americans making wing sauces or salad dressings with vinegar as a base, a pinch of MSG rounds out the edge and makes the whole thing taste more like a restaurant sauce. Number 28. Add MSG to your tomato sauce or marinara. Chinese people rarely make Italian food, but this is where understanding the science matters. Tomatoes are naturally high in glutamates, which is exactly why tomato sauce tastes so good. Adding a small pinch of MSG to a tomato-based sauce essentially doubles down on what is already there. The result is a sauce that tastes like it has been simmering for twice as long as it actually has. The depth and richness you would normally only get from a long, slow reduction happens in a fraction of the time. Number 27. Rub MSG onto mushrooms before roasting them. Chinese cuisine uses mushrooms extensively, and the reason roasted mushrooms in Chinese cooking taste so much more intensely savory than Western roasted mushrooms is often this simple trick. Mushrooms are already loaded with natural glutamates. Adding a tiny pinch of MSG before roasting creates a compounding effect where the natural and added glutamates reinforce each other while the high oven heat causes both to concentrate and caramelize. Toss your mushrooms in a small amount of oil, pinch of MSG, and a little salt, then roast at high heat. The results are genuinely shocking. Number 26. Use MSG in your burger patty mixture. Chinese fast food restaurants have been doing this for decades. When you mix MSG directly into ground meat before forming patties, it seasons the meat from the inside out rather than just on the surface. Add about a quarter teaspoon per pound of ground beef along with your other seasonings. The MSG helps retain moisture during cooking because glutamate compounds interact with the water molecules in meat protein, meaning you get a juicier burger as well as a more savory one. Number 25. Make a MSG brine for chicken before frying or roasting. Chinese restaurant fried chicken, especially the kind from hole-in-the-wall Cantonese or Taiwanese spots, is often brined in a solution that includes MSG. Make a simple brine of water, salt, and a teaspoon of MSG per quart of water and submerge your chicken for 2 to 4 hours. The dissolved glutamates penetrate into the meat much more effectively than dry rubbing because they travel through the liquid into the muscle fibers. The chicken ends up seasoned at every level, not just on the surface, and the meat tastes dramatically richer after cooking. Number 24. Add a small pinch of MSG to your mashed potatoes. This is something Chinese home cooks apply to any starchy dish that tastes flat. Plain mashed potatoes made with just butter and cream can taste rich but one-dimensional. A tiny pinch of MSG added while mashing creates a savory undertone that makes the potato flavor itself more prominent and satisfying. The glutamates enhance the natural earthy quality of potato, making it taste more like itself but amplified. Americans who love loaded mashed potatoes will find that MSG gets you halfway there without adding a single extra ingredient beyond the tiny pinch. Number 23. Season your rice cooking water with a drop of soy sauce and a pinch of MSG. Chinese people know that plain white rice cooked in plain water tastes flat. Adding just a single drop of soy sauce and a pinch of MSG to your rice cooker water before cooking gives each grain a subtle savory coating as it absorbs liquid and expands. The rice does not taste like soy sauce rice. It tastes like better rice. Every grain has a faint depth that makes it a more satisfying base for whatever you put on top. Number 22. Mix MSG into compound butter for steaks and vegetables. This is a technique borrowed from how Chinese banquet kitchens season finishing sauces. Make a standard compound butter with garlic, herbs, and butter, but add a small pinch of MSG when mixing. This compound butter, when melted over a hot steak or finished vegetable dish, delivers umami right at the final moment when your senses are most alert. Finishing with umami is more effective than cooking with it because your first bite registers the full flavor before any dissipates through prolonged heat. Number 21. Dissolve MSG in warm water and use it to season vegetables before stir-frying. Chinese stir-fry technique is fast and furious, meaning there is very little time for seasoning to penetrate. Toss your vegetables in a solution of MSG dissolved in a tiny amount of warm water and let them sit for 5 minutes before they go into the wok. The dissolved MSG coats every surface and clings to the vegetable cells. When they hit the screaming hot wok, the flavor bonds immediately and the vegetables taste seasoned from within rather than glazed on the outside. Number 20. Use MSG in your stock or broth making process. Chinese people approach stock making differently than Western cooks. While a Western stock relies on long simmering to extract collagen and flavor, Chinese cooks often add a pinch of MSG near the end of simmering rather than at the beginning. Adding it at the end prevents the glutamates from fully bonding to other proteins and disappearing into the broth. You get the full impact of fresh glutamate taste layered over the developed flavors of a long-cooked stock, creating a broth that tastes both deep and bright at the same time. Number 19. Sprinkle a tiny amount of MSG onto sliced fresh fruit before serving. This might sound bizarre to American ears, but it is an old Chinese trick, especially in southern China where vendors sell fresh mango slices and pineapple with a savory, spicy powder that often contains MSG. The glutamate enhances sweet flavors as well as savory ones by making your palate more sensitive overall. A tiny pinch on watermelon, mango, or pineapple makes the sweetness pop in a way that is genuinely addictive. The contrast between savory and sweet triggers a complex sensory response that keeps you reaching for another piece. Number 18. Add MSG to your pickling brine for vegetables. Chinese pickled vegetables are a staple at almost every meal, and the brine often includes a small amount of MSG. When vegetables ferment or quick pickle in a brine containing glutamates, the MSG becomes part of the overall flavor matrix of the pickle. The result is a pickle that tastes complex and almost meaty in its depth, not just sour and salty. For Americans who love quick pickled cucumbers or jalapenos, add a quarter teaspoon of MSG per cup of pickling liquid and notice how much rounder the final product tastes. Number 17. Use MSG as part of your seasoning for homemade chips or crackers. Chinese rice crackers and shrimp chips are intensely seasoned with MSG as a standard practice, and this is why they are so addictive. When making baked or fried chips at home, whether potato, pita, or tortilla chips, dust them with a mixture of your chosen spices plus a small pinch of MSG right after they come out of the oil or oven while still hot. The heat helps the MSG adhere to the surface. The glutamate signals your brain to keep eating through the mechanism that food scientists call the continuation response, where umami literally makes you crave the next bite. Number 16. Mix a pinch of MSG into cream cheese or soft cheese spreads. This is a trick used in Chinese fusion cafes, especially in Hong Kong, where Western ingredients are adapted to suit a palate trained on umami-rich flavors. Stirring a tiny pinch of MSG into cream cheese or ricotta before using it in recipes makes the cheese taste aged and complex even if it is fresh. The glutamate mimics the naturally occurring glutamates in aged cheeses like Parmesan, which is why Parmesan tastes so intense. You're essentially shortcutting the aging process with one simple addition. Number 15. Add MSG to your chili oil or infused oils. Chinese chili oil is one of the most flavor-packed condiments on earth, and many restaurant versions include MSG as a key component. When you are making infused oil with chilies, garlic, and Sichuan peppercorns, add a pinch of MSG to the mixture after pouring the hot oil over the aromatics. The glutamate dissolves into the oil-based condiment and distributes evenly. Every use of the chili oil carries that base layer of umami that amplifies whatever dish you spoon it onto. Number 14. Season your avocado or guacamole with a tiny pinch of MSG instead of relying only on lime and salt. While this is not a Chinese dish, Chinese people apply this logic universally, which is that anything fatty and rich benefits enormously from glutamate because fat alone coats the palate and can taste monotonous without counterpoint. The MSG cuts through richness and gives your guacamole a savory, almost cheesy depth without adding any actual dairy. This is genuinely one of the most useful tips on this list for American home cooks. Number 13. Use MSG dissolved in water as a quick seasoning spray for proteins before grilling. Chinese restaurant chefs often have a spray bottle of various seasoning solutions near the grill, and MSG water is one of them. Dissolve a teaspoon of MSG in a cup of warm water and put it in a spray bottle. Lightly mist your steaks, chicken, or fish right before they go on the grill, and again when you flip them. The fine mist covers the entire surface evenly, something that is almost impossible to achieve by sprinkling dry crystals, and the MSG caramelizes into the seared surface during cooking. Number 12. Add MSG to your homemade ramen or pho broth at the final seasoning stage. Chinese and Vietnamese noodle shops that produce incredibly rich restaurant-quality broths in short periods of time are often using MSG as a strategic tool. Add a quarter teaspoon per quart of broth in the final 5 minutes of cooking. This preserves the bright, fresh quality of the glutamate while it sits on top of the slower flavors developed during hours of simmering. The broth tastes simultaneously deep and vibrant, which is the exact quality that keeps people lining up outside noodle restaurants. Number 11. Mix MSG into dry seasoning blends that you keep in your pantry. Chinese households keep seasoning blends pre-mixed and ready to use, and MSG is always in there. Make a blend of MSG, salt, garlic powder, onion powder, and white pepper in a ratio of roughly 1 part MSG to 4 parts salt, with the others to taste. Keep this blend in a shaker near the stove. Using this blend daily means everything you cook gets a consistent layer of umami without you having to think about it each time. This is how Chinese home cooking achieves consistent depth across completely different dishes every single day. Number 10. Use MSG in your batter for tempura or any light fry batter. Chinese-style deep-fried dishes use batters that are thin and crispy rather than thick and bready, and MSG is often incorporated directly into the batter. Adding a small pinch to your tempura batter or any light cornstarch-based batter means the coating itself is seasoned, not just the dipping sauce. The batter becomes a flavor contributor to the dish rather than just a textural element. For home cooks, this means your fried vegetables or shrimp taste complete even without sauce. Number 9. Season your cooking oil with MSG before sautéing garlic and ginger. This is a technique used by Chinese cooks who understand that flavor needs to be built in layers from the very first moment. Add a tiny pinch of MSG to your oil when it is warm, but before adding aromatics. The dissolved MSG in the oil then coats the garlic and ginger as they fry, creating a caramelized aromatics layer that is richer than what you get with garlic and ginger alone. Every ingredient that subsequently goes into the pan gets coated in this umami-infused aromatics base. Number 8. Add MSG to your marinade for tofu or tempeh. Chinese home cooks have used MSG to improve the flavor absorption of tofu for generations because tofu is notoriously bland and resistant to flavoring. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of MSG to your tofu marinade, along with soy sauce, sesame oil, and garlic. The glutamate actually helps draw flavoring liquids into the porous structure of tofu by changing the osmotic interaction between the tofu cell walls and the marinade. Firm tofu marinated this way for just 30 minutes tastes dramatically more seasoned than tofu marinated without MSG for 2 hours. Number 7. Use MSG as a finishing season on soups right before serving. This is one of the most universal practices across all of Chinese cooking, from home kitchens to Michelin-starred Chinese restaurants. Most seasoning is done during cooking, but a final pinch of MSG added to any soup just before it leaves the kitchen creates a final burst of umami that hits your palate first because it has not been diminished by heat. Think of it the way a chef finishes a sauce with butter. The MSG addition right at the end is called a finishing season, and the difference in perceived depth between a soup with and without this final step is honestly remarkable. Number 6. Combine MSG with sugar in marinades for a chemical flavor amplification effect. Chinese cooking frequently uses both MSG and a small amount of sugar in savory marinades, and this is not just for sweet-savory balance. Sugar at low concentrations actually enhances your perception of umami by stimulating a broader set of taste receptors simultaneously. The interaction between glutamate and small amounts of sucrose in a marinade creates a flavor that is more than the sum of its parts. Chinese people have known this empirically for generations, even without the science to explain it, and every great Chinese barbecue marinade uses this combination. Number 5. Season the oil for your fried rice with MSG before adding anything else to the pan. Fried rice is the dish where Chinese cooking skill is most visible, and this specific technique explains why restaurant fried rice always tastes better than what you make at home. Heat your oil in the wok until shimmering, then add a pinch of MSG to the oil and swirl it around for about 10 seconds before adding your rice. The MSG infuses into the oil and then coats every single grain of rice as it fries, creating a base layer of umami that permeates the entire dish. No amount of soy sauce added later can replicate this foundation. Number 4. Use MSG water to rehydrate dried mushrooms, dried shrimp, or other dried ingredients. Chinese cooking uses a remarkable variety of dried ingredients that must be rehydrated before use, including shiitake mushrooms, wood ear fungus, dried lily buds, and dried scallops. The standard rehydration liquid is plain water, but adding a small pinch of MSG to the warm soaking water fundamentally changes the outcome. As the dried ingredient expands and absorbs liquid, it also absorbs the dissolved glutamates. When it is cooked, it has additional savory depth beyond its natural flavor, and the soaking liquid itself becomes a more flavorful addition to sauces and braises. Number 3. Add MSG to your pizza dough and also on top. Here's the pizza hack, and it works in 2 stages. First, when you are making pizza dough, add a quarter teaspoon of MSG per 2 cups of flour. As the dough ferments, the glutamates interact with the developing yeast flavors and the gluten structure. The crust itself comes out tasting more complex and savory, not just like bread. Then, second, when you are finishing the pizza, dust a very light pinch over the top of the pizza right before it goes into the oven. The heat concentrates it into the cheese and sauce, amplifying every other topping you have added. Chinese people understand that pizza is essentially just a Western version of a flatbread with toppings, and the same flavor principles apply. Number 2. Apply a MSG solution to the surface of duck, chicken, or pork skin before roasting for the crispiest, most flavorful skin possible. Peking duck is the most famous example of Chinese roasting technique, and while the full preparation is complex, this specific element is something anyone can do at home. Mix a teaspoon of MSG with a tablespoon of warm water and brush it evenly over the skin of your bird or pork belly before roasting. Allow it to dry completely in the refrigerator, uncovered, for at least 2 hours. The MSG draws out additional surface moisture, helping the skin dry more effectively than without it. When it roasts, the MSG compounds participate in the Maillard reaction on the skin surface, creating a crackling, deeply flavored crust that is measurably more complex and savory than skin roasted without this step. Number 1. The single most powerful MSG trick used in Chinese cooking is using it to replace a significant portion of the salt in every dish you cook. Chinese people have known this for over a century, and it is the actual foundational secret behind the addictive depth of Chinese cuisine. MSG is roughly 1/3 as salty as table salt by weight, but it delivers a far more complex and satisfying flavor response. By replacing half your salt with an appropriate amount of MSG, you get similar saltiness with dramatically more depth. You reduce your overall sodium intake because you need less total seasoning to achieve satisfaction, and every dish you cook gains that ineffable restaurant-quality richness that home cooks spend years trying to replicate. This is not a trick or a shortcut. It is a fundamental rethinking of how seasoning works, and it is the single most impactful thing Chinese cooking can teach American home cooks about getting more flavor from every single meal. Start with a 1-to-1 ratio replacement by volume and adjust from there. Your cooking will never taste the same again.